In cinema, historical material has often served as a backdrop for philosophical inquiry. In Bergman's Seventh Seal, the historical context of the Black Death paves the way for profound existential and metaphysical questions. In Kurosawa's Rashomon, history and philosophy are intertwined to reflect on moral relativism and the complexities of human experience. The ebb and flow of history might shape these movie characters and their predicament. However, the intimate and detailed examination of the personal stories provides a micro-historical focus. This, in turn, has the power to transform characters into allegorical figures, exploring broader themes related to the human condition and our varied responses to oppression. Such a micro-historical approach and philosophical investigation are at the crux of Hungarian filmmaker Zoltan Fabri's The Fifth Seal. Over 2 consecutive nights, the ethical and moral foundations of 4 ordinary people are tested. The results are thought-provoking and relentlessly surprising, although these events might be deemed unremarkable to show up in any historical records.
A magukfajta emberke csak úgy boldogulhat manapság, ha behúzza szépen a nyakát, lesmárolja a...
Though Hungarian cinema isn't attached to a widely recognized cinematic movement, the country's long history of political oppression and resistance has made its filmmakers uniquely approach the historical past. The daring works of Miklós Jancsó are rife with formal experimentation and allegorical storytelling. He takes specific historical scenarios and rigorously exposes the realities of oppression, war, violence, and dehumanization. Though his films unfold in wide open spaces, there is the feeling of confinement as history painfully repeats itself. Istvan Szabó's historical narratives can be called operatic. He waves a grand sweep of historical events by balancing the macro and micro stories. The sublime slow cinema of Bellatar is not explicitly historical. The subtly presented historical context, however, shapes the atmosphere and themes of his films. In fact, the historical decontextualization in Thar's cinema allows him to closely capture certain realities of the human experience. Zoltan Fabri, however, isn't a formalist like Jancsó or Thar, but the historical past shapes his reflection on humanity's moral and ethical concerns. His austere aesthetics withhold astonishing levels of mastery. The Fifth Seal, in particular, despite being a chamber piece like 12 Angry Men, boasts an intriguing visual flavor. For instance, the clever intercut with the paintings of Bosch.
Hieronymus Bosch envisioned a world engulfed in evil, with darkness more than night. The Garden of Earthly Delights, zijn meesterwerk, his masterpiece.
But what makes Fabri's Fifth Seal a remarkable historical drama is the way it actively engages the viewer. It poses a nagging "what would you do" question that's hard to forget. 4 middle-aged men gather round a table in an empty bar during a curfewed night in a war-torn Budapest, Hungary. The sardonic watchmaker, pleasure-seeking bookseller, the shrewd barkeep, and the righteous carpenter. An artistic photographer accidentally joins these 4. There are ominous sounds of soldiers marching in the streets, the threat of air raid loose, and on one occasion the members of the fascist regime intrude upon the bar patrons' conversation. The five discuss a variety of subjects from recipes, freedom of thought to ideology and war. The watchmaker then drops the disquieting hypothetical question.
Azt mondanák magának, hogy meghal. De előtte jogában áll választani. Minek támadhat fel? Mit választana? Tomóceusz Katatiki akarna lenni inkább, vagy Gyugyu? Na mindjárt megérti, ha elmagyarázom.
The slave endures endless agony and indignities but finds solace in the belief that his conscience is clear. The tyrant commits horrific acts, yet he feels no guilt and even believes himself to be a faultless ruler. Now, would you choose the moral superiority of the victimized slave or the unabashed supremacy of the sadistic despot? Though initially the answer looks simple, the more they deliberate, the more they realize it's anything but that. Even as the men leave the bar, the question follows them. We might wonder why they need to choose, but soon we witness a scenario where making a moral choice will decide their survival. Before getting into the extreme environment, we get a deeper glimpse of who these men are as individuals in the interlude. The carpenter is rattled that he couldn't easily choose to be the slave over the tyrant. The barkeep counts his money and is preoccupied with surviving the volatile economy. The bookseller rushes to his lover's bed, and the watchmaker is hiding the persecuted Jewish children at his apartment. The photographer makes a clear-cut choice.
Gyugyut választom. A rabszolgát.
Having lost his leg on the warfront, the photographer perhaps feels a kinship with the slave in the fable. He also believes his conscience is clear, that is, until the watchmaker says,
Hazudik.
Hogyan mondta, kérem?
Hazudik.
The film's title refers to the end-time prophecies in the Book of Revelation, where the opening of the fifth seal causes the martyrs' souls to cry out for justice. As we learn from his monologue, the photographer perceives himself as a martyr of sorts. However, his subsequent action is antithetical to what he believes, which brings us to the narrative's crucial section. As the four men reconvene at the bar the following evening, the fascists arrest them and take them to police headquarters. They are beaten up without any clear charges. A calm yet intimidating superior officer thinks this is the fitting scenario to test his theory.
Protestálni, lázadni, tiltakozni csak az olyan ember tud, aki becsülheti önmagát. Kiengedne innen embereket, akik félni fognak tőlünk, gyűlölni fognak bennünket, de jogosan becsülik önmagukat. Elkövetne ilyen hibát. Amíg az önérzetnek nyoma van bennük, addig hiába veri a félelmet agyuk tekervényeibe, tanár úr. Mi következik ebből? Mi lehet a maga teendője? Meg kell utáltatni őket önmaguk előtt. Világos?
Near dawn, the fatigued four are brought to a hall and put to a shocking moral test. A resistance fighter, tortured and nearly unconscious, is hung up in the middle of the hall. The four can go home if they twice slap the Christ-like martyr figure. The carpenter steps forward, but he is unable to put up with his moral crisis, which is stressed by the shot of the blinding light. Only the watchmaker makes a choice before it is imposed upon him. The alleged self-centered souls surprise us and perish, not with a sense of assertiveness or moral superiority, but with trepidation and despair. However, the watchmaker survives without losing himself to existential inquiry. Did his previously established noble objective give him the courage to do it? If that's the case, then the fascist officer's theory of testing self-worth doesn't seem to understand the complexities that make up an individual. Perhaps to keep on living and ride the perilous tides of history means adopting certain traits of the fable's tyrant and slave, something that can't be defined by the limitations of the moral and ethical quandaries. Aren't we too complex to fit into preconceived ideals and intellectual propositions?